As a continuation of yesterday's discussion about the thinking processing tools that we use to answer the question, what to change, right? We're identifying the problem and why it persists inside of our company. I want to revisit my cloud and show you how it is influenced and interacts with the current reality tree that we operate off of. So the current reality tree identifies the cause and effect between a root cause and the series of experiences that people have. And the root cause that we identify is that the real estate industry's paradigm does not recognize profitability as a professional standard. Everything emanates by cause and effect from that. The way agents act, the way real estate schools act, the struggle to generate revenue, whatever it might be, the root of those experiences that we have lie in that. And again, the current reality tree traces the cause and effect. If this happens, then this happened, then this is experienced, then this happens. And if this is the case, then this is the case. And if this is the case, then this is the case, all the way down. The reason we do that using what is called sufficiency-based logic is it helps to explain the core of all of our symptoms, the commonality that all of these experiences have. And again, it comes down to that root cause. That the industry does not consider profitability as a professional standard. That said, we still need to understand why that root cause persists inside of our company, not the industry. Like, we can't change how people feel, and we can't make people accept that as a paradigm. If we want to reverse that root cause, if we want to address it, we have to build our operations in a particular way that reverses the cause, that reverses the conditions of that root cause persisting. And the conditions of that root cause persisting inside of our company, again, we don't have to fix the world. We just have to fix what we can take control of, is to use what we call the cloud. Now, the cloud is essentially another logical tree that explains the assumptions that we're making, the business assumptions that we're making. And yesterday we used a very general example, and I did mention on the Go Live that I would share my own and explain what that means, and here it is. This is my cloud. So when I started in the real estate industry exclusively, like this being my primary focus 3 years ago. And I started to internalize all of these TOC practices that I'm sharing with you now. This is the business strategy document. This is my cloud. And you can see here that there are two, what I call competing clouds, the business side and the personal side. So, like we said, with the cloud, it identifies the goal. The personal goal is to be a present and happy father and husband. And the business goal is to make money right now in the real estate industry. All right. I'm going to come back to this conflict here in a second between those two, but I want to work backwards. In order to be a present, happy father, I must always be with my wife and girls. And in order to be a present and happy father, I must be creative and productive in the market or with other people, other professionals, right? So there are two necessary requirements to be happy and present. I must be with the people I love, and I must be creative. I must have an outlet for my creativity. I can't be a happy present father if I'm forced to commute to a job where I sit 9 to 5 and I follow a bunch of corporate rules. I can't do that. I'm not judging people that do. In fact, I'm happy for people that operate within that environment. My wife is one of them. She's very good at working in a very structured environment like that. But that's not me. right? So these two things have to be satisfied. I can't be present and happy if I'm not being creative. And I can't be present and happy if I'm always abandoning my wife and girls. That's why I can't travel all the time. But in order to be present, I must not be with anybody else. I must not go other places as much as humanly possible to be here. And in order to be creative, I must spend time with other professionals, right? I can't be creative in a market if there is no market for me to spend time around. And in other words, this creates a conflict. And that conflict is I don't have time to do both. Right? And that's what the cloud helps me to identify here, is because that conflict is powered by a series of assumptions. Each of these arrows represents an assumption we are making, right? So the assumption about being a present, happy father and that I must be with my wife and girls, the assumption is that Blair, Blake, and Dylan bring me a sense of joy and happiness that I literally cannot find with other people. And that's absolutely, that is logically true. It's true as a fact. So that's a safe assumption to make. We can operate off that assumption. That assumption doesn't create this conflict. But to be happy and present, I also must be creative. The assumption is that I have a personality that doesn't work within structures. And again, that is traditional structures. Structure's good. But I don't follow rules the way they're written. I ask the question why so incredibly often. I come up with unique ways of thinking about problems. All of this stuff does not thrive within that structured environment because those environments have to build those structures to survive, right? So in other words, the assumption behind this is that I have to have the freedom to be creative. And I absolutely do. That's a good assumption to work off of, is that I have to create a situation where I'm free to do as I please. That's a good assumption to work off of. Now, the assumption connecting that I must be with other professionals to be creative, the assumption is that I can't create in a vacuum. Is that I have to have people actually see and use and question and interact with what it is that I create. Again, a very safe assumption. And it's a good assumption to operate off of, because when I have other people that I help with problems, that gives me a sense that my creativity has a purpose, has a functional purpose, as well as a spiritual purpose. And so that's an assumption worth operating off of, right? And then to not be with anybody else, the assumption here is that, again, it's kind of the same assumption here, but a little bit more in depth, and that is that there's literally nobody else in the world that has the qualities of my wife and girls, and that is absolutely true. Again, that's not to speak pejoratively about other people, but it just simply says God put Blair in this world, and God put me in this world for a very specific purpose he had, and I think part of that purpose is to reflect his love and enjoyment of the world through the way that we have our marriage and our family. And so, in other words, the assumption that connects these two is that there is a purpose for Blair and me to be together the way that we are with our girls. And that's a very good assumption to have. Now, between these, there's an assumption that these can't operate in the same universe, right? That's where the conflict lies. The conflict lies in the assumption that I don't have the ability to do both at the same time. Now, when I ask myself, I say, of course I don't have the ability to be with other people at the same time as my family. Why is that the case? Well, it's because there's not enough time in the day. And so that's starting to drill down to the assumption here that creates this conflict. And the idea behind the cloud is that I can now start to find ways to make that conflict disappear by basically saying, I can have time for both clients and family. What does it mean when I say I don't have time for both? I'm making the assumption that it takes a tremendous amount of time to have meaningful interactions with my wife and girls, and that it takes a tremendous amount of time to have meaningful, productive interactions with clients and people in the market. That's the assumption that creates the conflict. And if I want to make the conflict disappear, then I need to figure out ways to shorten the interaction between clients and me, or make the time, the firm time that we have together far more purposeful, far more productive. And so that means the injection, the actions that I take have to result in fewer, far more productive meetings. That's the resolution to this conflict here, is that to have time for both, I need fewer meetings. And in order to have fewer meetings, the trade-off is I can't just sit there and do fewer meetings over a longer series of meetings. I have to make sure that if I'm limiting the amount of time I spend with clients, I have to literally make it 10 times more productive. Fantastic. Now we have a focus on how it is that we can strategically make decisions in terms of the personal cloud. And the logic for the business cloud is the same thing, right? The goal is to make money in the real estate industry. In order to make money in the real estate industry, I must generate revenue for my agency. I must also create revenue for the clients that I serve. In other words, I'm not able to make money if I can't get paid for making money for other people. Seems pretty logical. But in order to produce revenue for my agency, I have to charge as much as I possibly can. I have to be paid for what my time and energy and knowledge is worth. And in order to generate revenue for my clients, I have to charge as little. So in other words, I have to make sure that their margins are as high as possible. If not, I don't get paid. Now that obviously creates a conflict, because clients do not necessarily want to pay me based on what my time is worth. Nobody's going to sit there and say, man, I think your time is worth $150 and I'm going to pay you because this other guy's time is only worth $75. I think that's an absolute truth, that nobody's willing to make that sort of trade-off in payment. So to that end, the resolution to that is I have to be able to demonstrate for clients that they can't look at things as a cost, that they have to look at things as an investment. And I have to be able to demonstrate a 10x investment to what it is that you're doing. Now, it didn't have to be 10x. It could be 5x, it could be whatever. I just put 10x in there as a baseline. But essentially, whatever solution, whatever strategic decision I make, I have to be willing to show that the investment will logically pay off. I have to show them the clearest path to profitability. And I have to demonstrate a commitment to that profitability with whatever the strategy is that I put together for them. That results in me making the money that I'm worth, and it essentially helps them to see that they are paying as little as possible. Because if you can turn 10 cents into a dollar every single time, you're not really paying all that much. You're paying 90, you're getting 90 cents back in profit. I mean, that's a good thing. So to that end, that's how we resolve the conflict on this side. That's how we ensure that clients, whatever it is that we do, that's how we make sure clients want to pay me what my time is worth. Now, all of that said, these clouds, these goals create a conflict. And that conflict is essentially driven by the fact that I can't buy my happiness. And clients don't want to pay me to be happy. So, emanating from this side, I don't have time for both people. I have to make time for both people. I want to be paid for that time that I make. But clients aren't going to pay me because it makes me happy. Like, they're not going to walk away out of the kindness of their heart and say, man, that Rob is in a good place. I'm glad I paid him so he could be in a good place. So in other words, what this collectively tells me I need to do strategically is create value in as little time as possible. So in other words, I need to productively be producing profit in as few meetings with clients as possible. And so my solution essentially came down to reducing my thinking processes, things like this, to something that can be done within an hour. To be able to demonstrate clear profitability, a clear strategy for profitability in less than 60 minutes. That's it. Like, that's the strategy. The beauty part about the cloud is that when you start to answer the future questions like what does the future reality tree look like, the cause and effect, it's very similar to the way a current reality tree looks, except here at the bottom, you're saying these are the actions that I'm going to take, and here's the cause and effect of those actions inside of my business and inside of the experiences of the people that I work with. That's what the future reality tree is. But I now have a way to knock out probably about 90% of the dumb shit that I might potentially do. Because it's pretty clear. If anything creates or exacerbates or adds to this conflict, or this conflict, I don't do it. And just by virtue of the fact that I've identified what those conflicts are, I can take the first and most important step of eliminating waste, of eliminating conflict, of eliminating bad decision-making, unclear decision-making. Which means now if I'm eliminating 90% of that decision-making, I can take actions that are far more focused on what is actually the best decision. Not what's a good decision, what is the best decision. And it makes my life easier for it. I'm now buying happiness. I have a choice with what I do with the money that I earn. The choice is not which bill to pay. The choice is, what do we want our Disney vacation to look like? And I can say that with all confidence. As much as I hate Disney, I love being with Blair and the girls. And I might not always want to be there, but I always want to be with them as much as I can. So anyways, that's when we talk about the change sequence, and the first and most fundamental question being, strategically, like in terms of developing a strategy, the most important decision you can make is what to change. You cannot answer the other questions of how to make a change, which is the third change question, or what to change to, which is the second change question. If you don't answer the first, that is what to change. Here's my cloud. Here's the strategy behind how I do it. And the beauty about AI, the AI age, is that the injections, which we will see in the next lesson or the next go lives about the thinking processes, is the injections were pretty simple for me. Use AI. Train your AI in a specific way. Train your AI in a specific set of processes. And the logical future reality tree as a result of that has been something pretty powerful.